Now, St. Patrick, as you probably know, he is the patron saint of Ireland. But what most people don't realise is there are actually 3 patron saints of Ireland. There's actually another guy called St. Columba, or St. Columkill, just depending on where you're from or who you talk to. And then there's also St. Bridget, who was actually the first woman bishop, in fact, which is a whole other story into itself. But anyway, so St. Patrick is, generally seen as the one patron saint, but I like to clear up the fact that he was just one of 3, in fact. But anyway, what's the thing about St. Patrick? Like, what's so great about him? Well, St. Patrick didn't start off as a saint. He actually started off as a Roman. He was from Wales. So a bunch of plundering Irish went over to Wales, kidnapped, did a bit of plundering and such like that, brought Patrick back to Ireland. He was sold into slavery. That's kind of, that's how we did things in Ireland back in the day, But anyway, so he was sent up into County Mayo, where I was talking about the good real estate earlier on. And so he was sent there to look after sheep, believe it or not. And he was there for many years, and he started to kind of feel sorry for himself. But then one night he heard this kind of weird dream, and it was like God speaking to him, saying, "You're going to be great. You're going to save the children of Ireland," and things like that. And God said, "You follow your way back, become a priest, become a mighty religious guy." And so he did this. He managed to escape, and he got back to Wales. He went throughout Europe and became sort of a bishop, and very learned and very holy. And then eventually came back into Ireland and set about converting all the Irish, which is what he's become very famous for, and why he's sort of the big guy in Ireland, and especially around St. Patrick's Day. Because Ireland is an extremely Catholic country, and so it all goes down to the credit goes to our friend St. Patrick. But there's a good tale about when he first sort of arrived in Ireland, because Ireland at the time was very pagan, or pre-Christian, as a lot of people like to say. That's more the PC way of saying it. But anyway, at this time, there's an area just north of Dublin. Actually, if you want to grab the map there, I can point that out. So there's my hometown of lovely Dublin again. So in around this area, there's an area known as Tara. So these low kind of hills, they're giant hills, but they're, lowish hills. But this was basically the seat of power for the high kings and the high druids of Ireland. And every year they would have this special ceremony. It was around Easter time this always happened. And basically what was done is the king declared that no fires could be lit throughout Ireland on this particular magical night, save for the fire at Tara, where the high druids and the high priests of Ireland would get together and do these sort of incantations and special sort of ceremony type things. Now, St. Patrick was fairly oblivious to this coming in. Even though he'd spent some time in Ireland, he was mainly on the side of the hill with sheep, and they weren't very good conversationalists and didn't really give him a lot of cultural exchange. So anyway, so he comes in, he's like, "Oh, it's around Easter, we probably should do, Paschal fire type thing." So he builds a giant big bonfire on the hill, the very next hill to the one at Tara. So of course, he lights his a little bit early, and he's doing his religious ceremony and doing his prayers, and he's kneeling down, but not very holy and such, But of course, on the hill next to it, they can all see the fire, and they're like, "What? Who's lighting the fire?" And they strictly made the declaration, no fires in the whole country. So the high kings and druids sent a bunch of guys down. They're mightily mad, as you can imagine. They grab St. Patrick and his followers, drag him up to the hill at Tara, and they're like, "Well, come on, what's all this about?" So St. Patrick uses the opportunity, because now he's meeting the high lords of Ireland, which is sort of, in one respect, a bad turn of events, because they're probably more than likely going to kill him. But then he also got a chance to chat to them and maybe convert them. So he's a bit of a, positive thinker, as it were. So he sort of think of the light side of the situation. So anyway, he's like talking about God and how great it is. And so the druids are like, "Oh, it's with this God." And the high king's like, "Well, if you were so great and your God's so awesome, prove it." So anyway, St. Patrick said, well, I think maybe you guys should prove your power too, because you think you're so great. So anyway, the druids made this great incantation. This really dense fog started to descend upon them. And then St. Patrick, "Well, that's very impressive, but can you get rid of it?" And they said, "Crap. Can we get rid of it?" It was like, it was there, they couldn't really undo it now they were doing. So St. Patrick sort of got into, super prayer technique, gets into the whole kneeling thing. He's super praying. Suddenly a big shaft of light comes down on him. It's all like, oh, and stuff like that. And of course, the whole fog shifts and the sky lightens, and everyone's amazed at the power of St. Patrick, and the power of his God can actually overcome the power of the druids. And so they're all a little weary of him now. They're like, we better not mess with this guy, this could turn out bad for us. So in that moment, he managed to get the respect and also the passage of the High King of Ireland. And then he's free to travel throughout Ireland from that moment and to convert as many people as he possibly can.